There's been some talk about the Adkins woman having said something to a cellmate which gave you a lead, but it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that she simply confirmed some of the things you already knew.
She confirmed some of the things we already knew, and she did tell us some new things which we hadn't heard before.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about a man I've heard of, a burglary suspect in your Venice division, who also supplied some information?
Yes, he supplied the information a few days after we had originally started our investigation and had talked with the sheriff's investigators on the Hindman case. This man who was in jail in the Venice division did supply some information and names of additional people who might help us and supply additional information.
Aside from the people we've just mentioned, are there any other persons, men or women, who have supplied additional information for you? Perhaps you can't give us their names at this time, but...
No, I can't give you their names, but there was another girl who assisted prior to Susan Atkins starting to talk. Her name was given to us by the sheriff's office. She had also assisted in the Hindman.
Turn around once, girls, will you? Turn around here, girls.
First of all, I believe it's very clear that Mr. Manson always has been denied counsel of his choice in this matter. Back in December, he was asking to have Mr. McKissick and Mr. Steinberg as his attorneys of record, and I would hope possibly to try and get them involved in this case, possibly even to substitute out and have them substitute in.
Is this your first case that you'll be trying?
Yeah, this will be the first case that I've ever tried.
How long have you been an attorney?
Just since last June.
And why did you want to get into this one?
Well, I believe that there are a lot of things going down in this case, just as in the Chicago 7 cases, and there's a lot. I think you would have a much better shot if you weren't talking with me, but you were picking up some of the friends of Manson over there who were singing.
Are you going to go ahead with the psychiatric examination?
No, we've withdrawn the psychiatric examination. I've seen Mr. Manson in county jail for probably more than any other attorney, 70, 80 times, and it's certainly my feeling that Mr. Manson is sane. There's no question about his sanity in my mind.
You feel you're capable of defending that?
I believe that probably, as Mr. Manson stated earlier, that no man is capable of representing another, and that I feel that it's unfortunate that the court is screwed around, if you pardon the expression, with Mr. Manson's representation, that it's because of the things that the court has done that Mr. Manson was originally forced to go pro.
Ron Hughes just told me that this will be the very first case he's ever tried of any kind. Do you see him substituting out a little later and Mr. Manson substituting someone else in?
I cannot predict what Mr. Manson will do.
Well, how long legally can a defendant keep substituting attorneys?
I think that this will be his last substitution because he has chosen Mr. Hughes. He's consulted with Mr. Hughes on at least a dozen occasions that we know of, and so he knows what he's getting when he asks for Mr. Hughes, and Mr. Hughes can also consult with the other attorneys who have many years of practical experience and trial experience.
What's your answer?
Good morning. Good morning.
Ray? Somebody else.
Yeah. Hey, Rich. Rich. Mr. Hughes, give us your Would you give us your comment on the procedure in there today?
Well,
You've been
first-
substituted in as Mr. Manson's attorney. Sure,
Experience at all?
No, I'm not.
you feel you're fully capable of defending a man charged with 3 counts of conspiracy and 4 counts of murder?
Well, he's charged actually with 7 counts of murder and only 1 count of conspiracy. Allow him to have associate counsel, and then from other things that the court has done, this has later forced the court to take that pro per status away. Mr. Manson at points was getting very close to a number of truths, exposing the system of criminal justice that we have in this country, that a man who is allowed to defend himself is, on paper, is allowed to defend himself, but in actuality, he was not allowed to defend himself. As you recall, at one point, Mr. Manson wrote a letter to the district attorney pointing out that the terrible odds that he was at, that the district attorney had these wonderful facilities in which to try and convict him and seek his death, and yet Mr. Manson had to wait for an hour and a half to make a 10-minute phone call.
You said
Seek the pro per status again.
I would hope to get Mr. Manson's pro per status back. I imagine that will be very difficult, and it might very well be impossible.
Tell us something about yourself, Mr. Hughes.
Reiner came into court this morning with a signed motion in his briefcase making him the attorney of record. Yet Manson substituted you in at the last moment. Was this a last-minute decision? Did he have something up with Ira Reiner until he came into court this morning?
I'm really not sure about that.
Mr. Hughes.
Now, let's talk to Aaron. Roll on this. Where do we stand in this matter now?
Well, we stand that was set for trial on April 20th, 1970. The case is presently set in Judge Keene's court. Next week on March 24th, Ms. Krenwinkel makes a motion for a change of venue and for a motion to dismiss. If those motions are denied, then her case too will be set as it is now for April 20th. We're prepared to go to trial now, and we're prepared to go to trial against this so-called common defense.
Is due to go to trial the 23rd of April in Santa Monica on another matter. She's due to go to trial here on the other matter.
Yes.
Now, how's it going to work out?
Well, she can't be in 2 places at once, so if this trial starts before the other one will have to wait for her to get finished
It'll
here.
have to trail then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Several things happened today, among which is that Mr. Manson's petition for a writ of habeas corpus, the court held that inasmuch as Manson was not pro per at the time he filed that motion, that he did not have standing to file the motion with the court. He had an attorney of record, Ronald Hughes. Hughes should have filed the petition for a writ of habeas corpus. With respect to Susan Atkins' motion to set aside her admissions and confessions at the grand jury, the court held that the motion today was premature, and the trial court would have to hear that motion once the trial commenced.
Mr. Caballero and I were subpoenaed as witnesses by Mr. Shin, Miss Atkins' attorney, and on the representation by Mr. Stovitz of the District Attorney's Office that the people would not rely upon her confessions or admissions or statements. The judge ruled the matter was not before the court this morning, and the entire matter went off calendar.
Does this mean that her grand jury testimony will likely not be entered in the Manson trial?
At this moment, that is the indication, yes.
Day, you represent Susan Atkins.
That's correct.
Now, I understand the rumor is, and maybe you can confirm it or deny it, that she is going to deny that everything she said on the witness stand in the grand jury is true.
That's correct. She's going to deny all her statements made at the grand jury.
Well, song today.
Paul, the judge put off calendar the motion to suppress certain evidence by Susan Atkins.
That's correct, Dick.
Now, maybe you can't comment on it this time. That Susan claims that she was inadequately represented by Mr. Caballero, and that the whole thrust of the defense was to sell a book.
Oh, that is totally untrue. I have personal knowledge that Mr. Caballero was going to save Susan Atkins' life. Now we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I can say that with some authority, that Susan Atkins couldn't have been better represented by any lawyer in this country. And when you consider the scope of the offenses that are charged in the indictment, and you realize that Mr. Caballero, in effect, saved this young lady's life, I think any statement that she was not adequately represented is totally unwarranted.
Without using the grand jury testimony, would you have an estimate, being familiar with the case, about what the state will have to rely upon now?
Well, from independent knowledge not gained from Miss Atkins, I've learned that there are independent witnesses to whom she's made statements, quite apart from grand jury testimony. And of course, the people have substantial circumstantial evidence upon which they can rely. And I think that will be the main thrust of the prosecution's case.
Thanks, Paul. Craig, are these records subpoenaed in Ducis Tecum in regard to the removal of Susan Atkins from the facility at any time?
Yes, we received a subpoena ducis tecum for records of removal and visits during the month of December.
But you were not called to testify today, so undoubtedly you can't discuss what's in there.
That's correct, sir.
But they do pertain to Susan Atkins.
Yes, they are records concerning her stay at Sybil Brand.
And you're the head ramrod over at the jail.
Jail commander, yes, sir.
Thanks, Craig, very much.
Does this have something to do, Craig, with her activities in the jail?
The subpoena is for removal records, orders to remove her from the jail for various appearances, and for persons who visited her during the month of December.
You're going to have to explain that to me if you can. Remove her where?
A removal order is when a judge orders that a person is taken to a certain court, like the grand jury or a different court to testify. Any court order is a removal order.
Let me ask you this, Craig, and if you can't comment, just say so. Do these records have anything to do with Susan Atkins being taken from the jail to the attorney's office in Beverly Hills?
I don't think that I can disclose the content of the order, sir.
All right, thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Vince, succinctly as you can, what happened in that grand jury is true. Will she be subject to perjury?
She may be. I don't know. She may be.
What will you advise her to do in this instance?
Well, we were trying to have a hearing today to strike a testimony at the grand jury hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do strike that, then they would have to dismiss the indictment. Then they may pursue her for maybe perjury.
I see.
But perjury is better than murder.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Paul, you asked for and were granted a discovery motion in the court this morning. What's that for?
Well, we'd previously asked that the prosecution turn over to us statements of people who had confessed to the Tate and the LaBianca homicides. We also asked that the prosecution turn over to us substantial evidence they had in their possession that would indicate that persons other than the now defendants committed the Tate-LaBianca killings. We want to examine at length and very carefully the statements of other people, the physical evidence of other people. There are a number of people who are prime suspects in the offenses before the court, and we just don't have that information at this time, and we need it in order to prepare our defense. Our defense may well be that persons other than Charles Manson, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten et al. Committed this offense. There is substantial evidence in existence that people other than them committed this offense.
Thank you, Paul, very much.
In my opening statement, I said that these murders were perhaps the most bizarre, savage, nightmarish murders in the recorded annals of crime. And I think that Linda Kasabian's testimony on that witness stand today illustrated what I was saying in my opening statement. She was filled with emotion in describing the first night of horror, the first night of terror. There's no words to describe what she was saying, and only she was there that night. She heard the unbelievable screams, the pleading, the begging. How do you describe what happened that night other than in her words?
What was her vantage point?
Her vantage point, she was in the driveway at first, and she heard these horrible, horrendous screams coming from men and women, constant screams, pleading for their lives, coming from inside the residence. At that point, she ran up to the residence. She wanted the carnage to stop. She saw Frykowski coming out the front door. His face was bathed in blood. He fell into a bush. He staggered up. Then he fell into the lawn. She saw Tex get on top of him, stab him repeatedly, club him over the head. Frykowski was struggling, begging, pleading for his life. He was screaming. And contemporaneous with that, she saw a woman in a white gown who has been identified now as Miss Folger running in the back part of the lawn, and Patricia Krenwinkel chasing after her with an upraised knife. That's basically been her testimony with respect to the murders. Now, she did not see the murder of Sharon Tate or Jay Sebring. The testimony will show that that took place, of course, inside the residence. She, of course, also did testify that she saw Tex point the .22 caliber revolver inside the driver's side of the vehicle and shoot Stephen Parent to death by firing the gun 4 times.
Has she always been this emotional in describing these events?
Every time she comes up to this point, she cannot contain herself and she starts to cry. She's a very sensitive, delicate girl, and I think you glean that from her testimony today on that witness stand.
She was not in on the plot from the beginning, she claims, and she didn't know what was going on until she got there.
Well, her testimony is she thought they were going out on a creepy crawling mission, which was described by her as a mission wherein the members of the family would dress in black and go into strangers' homes in the middle of the night, creeping and crawling and stealing what belonged to them in the first place. Perhaps the correct word would not be steal in their mind. These sex orgies per se have no independent significance. However, you heard Linda's testimony today. She said that he was calling all the shots at that sex orgy. He was the one that was deciding when the orgy would commence, who would touch whom. There was no sexual activity until he gave that instruction. We are offering this as one further indication of Manson's power and control and dominion over that family. We don't intend to tell the jury that out of a clear blue sky, he ordered his co-defendants to commit these murders. And this was the first order he had ever given other members of the family. We are putting on previous contacts with the member of the family, his association with them, his relationship with them, as circumstantial evidence that on the 2 nights in question, it was he who ordered these 7 murders. The sexual conduct per se, as I've indicated, has no significance.
Shouldn't say that she attempted to smuggle a note. She handed a note to Charles Melton, who was with me, and he gave it to Linda. We've never kept anything from Linda that they've sent in. I'm tired of it. I think it's time they let her do as she pleases. They've attempted for months now, even going so far as to sit down in front of my law office to intimidate her and me. I got a phone call a couple of weeks ago from a guy about 8:30. He says, if Linda Kasabian takes the witness stand, neither of you will ever leave the courtroom. And I said, at nighttime, I said, look, do me a favor. If you're going to threaten me, do it during office hours. I'm tired of it at night. This is just another example of this kind of damn foolishness. There's nothing we can do about it. It was upsetting to Linda. It was right before she went on the stand. I was followed all the way upstairs to where she was, and she tried to force her way in and screamed out, in addition to that, something to Linda which was incoherent. And we're just bloody tired of it, period.
Well, is there anything that the district attorney's office or the court should do about this or can do about it?
That's up to the district attorney. It's been many years since I was in that position. All we want to do is have her finish testifying and leave town.
That I might point out that Sandra Good is a friend and acquaintance of Linda Kasabian. I don't see anything improper in attempting to speak with her. I mean, I don't know the circumstances and the rules and regulations regarding the passage of notes in the Hall of Justice, but
On the face of it, I don't see anything improper.
Certain weapons which were taken to the Tate mansion. She testified to certain killings and things she saw. Can you relay to us what she said on the stand?
Well, it's hard to summarize a full day's testimony, Dick.
Anything substantial she said this afternoon that you hadn't heard from her before?
No, the prosecution, in fact, any attorney worth his salt, does not call a stranger to the witness stand. I've talked to Linda for hours, and I'm not going to deny that. And I'm sure that the defense, when they call their witnesses to the stand, they've spoken to them. You don't call someone to the stand and say, where were you on a particular night, and have the person say, I don't know what you're talking about. On this particular night, I was in Beirut, Lebanon. I have no idea why you're calling me to the stand. You talk to them and find out what their testimony is going to be and determine that it's relevant. So her testimony did not surprise me. Night, she had no idea, according to her testimony, that murders were going to be committed.
Do you have some idea how she's going to bear up under cross-examination?
I think she's going to hold up very, very well, Dick. When a person tells the truth, as I believe she is, it's pretty hard to destroy that person's credibility.
Vince, with
How
all
do you
the
think the other
obstructionist
defendants are
tactics,
taking this? Have you been looking at the other defendants? How do you think they're taking it?
I'm so caught up in the questions and answers of our star witness that I'm really not looking to my left.
Paul, I understand that you and perhaps some of the other defense attorneys are a little unhappy about certain Manson family members being excluded from the courtroom by method of subpoena.
That's correct. First, I don't believe there is such a thing as the Manson family, but a rather loose confederation of people who temporarily reside at what's known as the Spawn Ranch are the people I was referring to. And every time these people come to court as members of the public to witness the proceedings, the prosecution serves them with a subpoena and has them excluded from the courtroom. Now, if the prosecution legitimately intends to call these persons as witnesses, obviously we have no objection. But to say the least, these are hostile, reluctant witnesses for the prosecution. If anything, they could conceivably be defense witnesses, but certainly not prosecution witnesses. And it's our position that they deliberately subpoena these persons and exclude them from the courtroom so that they're not there while certain of their witnesses testify, namely Linda Kasabian.
You don't think they would try to influence her by looks, by signals, by standing in the courtroom and saying anything?
Well, I think the prosecution feels that the mere presence of some of Linda Kasabian's contemporaries and contemporaries of Manson and Van Houten and Krenwinkel would intimidate her. I suggest that if she's telling the truth, they don't have any problems.
Yesterday, one of the family members, or one of the Confederate members, as you put it, did attempt to smuggle a note to Linda. And it seems to me that is a form of intimidation.
I'm not aware of that.
Yes, Sandra Good attempted to deliver a note to Linda on the 9th floor yesterday afternoon.
Well, I'm not.
Gary, yesterday one of the family members, Sandra Good, attempted to smuggle a note to your client, Linda Kasabian, which in my mind is a form of intimidation. Do you have anything to say?
Well, Mr. Knarrick's had quite a reputation for being an obstructionist. Do you think that's a pretty good description of the man's tactics in a courtroom?
I better not say anything directly on that, John. All I can say is this. You've observed him for 5 weeks. You saw his demeanor. And now the trial has really got underway, and I think you will agree with me that there's been a dramatic change between the Knarrick you saw for 5 weeks and the Knarrick you're seeing now. I think you'll all agree with me on that.
Can you speculate on his motives?
To speculate on the motives behind Mr. Knarrick's doing anything would be a rather unprofitable undertaking.
Is he laying groundwork for the appeal of his case?
Again, I don't know that. This might be his motive, but I think you'd have to ask him directly on that.
How much longer do you think Linda will actually be on the stand?
I expect that Linda will be under direct examination for at least 1 more day, perhaps 1.5 more days. Now, after direct examination, of course, there's cross-examination. Cross-examination might last a day or 2. After cross-examination, I anticipate that we'll have Linda on redirect for another morning or afternoon sessions. So Linda's going to be on that stand for a total of about a week. Let's face it, she is the proverbial star witness for the prosecution.
Vince, are you as far along as...
Vin, what is the particular purpose bringing out about the sex orgies at this?
As far as he was the one who was directing the entire affair.
Okay. Thank you, Vince.
Yeah.
Irv, I heard and counted 87 objections of yours to prosecution questions in the morning session, including objections to allusions to sex orgies at the ranch. Why so many objections?
Well, again, I prefer not to get specific because of the gag rule, the order that we not discuss matters that are before the court. But I will, but answering in a more general way, first of all, let me backtrack. I would be glad to go over with you when we get the actual record of these questions and answers, and let's haul down the books, haul down the rules of evidence, haul down the case law and the statutes, and see whether what has occurred is proper or improper.
I'm not making a legal judgment.
I appreciate that. The fact is, however, that if lawyers ask improper questions, then it's the obligation of the lawyer on the other side to try to do something about it. In fact, that's one of the techniques that a prosecutor has of getting a result at any price, no matter what, even though it's improper, even though the result is not a legal one. The prosecution has the power, by opening his mouth and saying certain things, to bring out certain material.
Now, you're the latest attorney to come into the case, and you didn't get to see any of the witnesses testify. When you argue to the jury, is this going to present problems for you?
Well, of course it is. Of course it is, because I'm in no position whatsoever to really comment upon the witnesses' demeanor, how they testified, the character of their testimony. I can't describe them. I can't comment on the manner in which they testified. I have to leave that to the jury because they saw them, and I have to beg the jury to in effect, do my job for me, which I'm helpless in doing.
Well, I'm going to concentrate mostly on the witnesses that testified against my client, Susan Atkins. Mm-hmm. And I think there's about 6 or 7 witnesses that concentrated on Miss Atkins and testified against her.
Irv Kenerick, what can we hear from you?
What's your question?
I'd like your opinion about Mr. Fitzgerald's presentation this morning. I'd like to know if it jibes with the other 2 gentlemen here. Also, I'd like to know, since you're Manson's attorney, what, if anything, you plan to tell the jury in particular?
Well, I'd like to say that that Mr. Fitzgerald certainly, in his argument to the jury, in this case, has shown that he deserves the reputation that he has for being one of the finest trial lawyers in this country.
Mr. Keith, number one question, how do you think Paul Fitzgerald is doing with his argument to the jury?
I think he's doing a very excellent job, a very thorough job. He's been very articulate, very dramatic in places, and I feel it's something that the jury is going to listen to attentively, and I do feel very strongly that that jury is impressed by the job he's doing.
Is that your client will have gotten a fair and complete trial out of this?
Well, I don't think I should comment on that. I think that's up to some other tribunal, perhaps.
All right. Mr. Shin, what is your comment on Mr. Fitzgerald's presentation this morning and on your own upcoming one?
Well, I think Mr. Paul Fitzgerald has done a wonderful job, and he's covering most of the main points. And I think he's going to be through this afternoon. Then I'll argue, and I'll probably take about 3-4 hours to argue.
Are there any particular points that you can tell us about now, or are you ethically allowed to do that before you actually present your case?
That what he is doing by way of argument is magnificent.
He looks tired and worn in there this morning, and as a matter of fact, none of you gentlemen look completely rested, and I'm presuming it's because of the length of this trial.
Well,
you work at night as well as daytime, I'm sure.
Yes, that's a very fair statement.
Uh-huh. Now, is there any particular thing that you'd like to comment on the fact that none of the defendants are in court at this time?
No, I don't think that because of the publicity order of Judge Keene and Judge Older, I don't think that I can comment upon. I don't think that I can fairly respond to your question.
Okay. Is there any particular thing you would like to comment on that I haven't thought to ask you?
Yes, I would like to comment upon the district attorney's continuing attempt to interfere with the fairness of this trial by the publicity that is finding its genesis right in the district attorney's office.
Now, I don't know if this will upset your case or not, but I think you got a heck of a good Christmas present there with that tie, Irv.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Morning, Charlie. Any comment at all?
Have a big laugh. Ah.
Bert, what was the reason for all 4 defendants being in court this morning when there's 2 different cases involved here?
Well, Dick, yesterday we went to the grand jury and secured a joint indictment in which the Hinman case and the Shea case were consolidated in one accusation. As a result, this is a new accusation which will eventually supersede the previously outstanding Hinman and Shea indictments.
Well, how can all 4 defendants be joined in 2 different cases when perhaps not all 4 are guilty of both crimes?
Dick, that's an excellent question. There is statutory and other legal authority for same. There are 2 bases involved here for the joinder. Number 1, it is permissible to join a case involving offenses belonging to the same class of crimes, such as crimes against the person. Murder would be one of those examples. Secondly, where you have different cases or different offenses involving different defendants, in which there is a common question of substantial importance, you are permitted again to join those offenses with the different defendants.
I'm on eavesdrop, Dick.
Day, your comment on the proceedings in Department 100 today.
The attorneys on that case didn't get any advance notice, and we didn't know when we walked into the court that they were going to consolidate those two cases. And I think the judge forgot that most of the defendants had attorneys, and when he consolidated, I don't think that he can wipe out the attorney for the defendants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I made a motion to vacate the proceedings he had this morning in Department 100.
And you will continue to represent your client in these new pending cases?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. By joining these cases, consolidating them, that it would save the county a lot of money.
Well, of course, this is the basis for the statutory preference. There is a code section which explicitly states that whenever possible, it favors joint trials. Were we required to try the Shea and Hindman cases separately, this would be a tremendous added cost to the taxpayers' very lean budget already.
Mm-hmm. Now, what actually transpired in court this morning?
Well, today we had Charles Manson, Bruce McGregor Davis, Steve Grogan, and Susan Atkins appearing for arraignment and further proceedings on the new consolidated indictment.
Okay, thanks very much, Bert.
Thank you, Dick.
Bert, Steve Grogan petitioned the court to represent himself, and you addressed the court on that issue. Now, what did you say and why?
Dick, I represented to the court that I was fully conversant with the evidence in connection with the Shorty Shea killing. I told the court that this case involves circumstantial evidence in the following manner. We have no body, and as a result of this difficult situation, we had to use every type of evidence that is available and admissible in a court of law. It's a very complex situation, and it involves building a very strong circumstantial chain. As a result of that representation to the court and other factors before the court, the court ruled that Mr. Grogan was not competent to represent himself.
Now, how many witnesses did you call before the grand jury to lay this case out for him? Some 40 or more, I understand.
Yes, approximately 42 witnesses testified before the grand jury. Now, bear in mind that we even had to prove the corpus delicti of that crime wholly by circumstantial evidence.
Mm-hmm. If I recall correctly, this will be the third case that I know of prosecuting somebody without a body. There was the L. Ewing Scott case and the recently completed Devon case.
Yes, and I believe there was another Scott case which was prosecuted by one of our deputies, Bob Immerman, several years ago, and I think there have been several others in California.
I see. Thank you, Bert.
Thank you.
You've already got the shot.
Okay, fellas, this is it? All right. She's inside. You better light it.
Well, I would rather not couch it in terms of what the judge said. I'll couch it in terms of what the district attorney has done. The district attorney of Los Angeles County, despite the law of the state of California, despite the federal constitution, despite all that we know about where any defendant is entitled to a fair trial, the district attorney has paraded, has deliberately injected pre-trial publicity in-trial publicity in connection with
Let him get over there off the street.
Okay.
Bruce, now don't get excited. It's okay, Bruce. It's okay. Hi, Bruce. Now let him get over here.
Bruce, can we ask you any questions at all? Like, for example, where have you been for months?
Well, I'm here now.
Well, could we ask you if you've ever been in Death Valley since the sheriff has launched several searches up there?
Why did you decide to come back now?
You look a little heavier than when I saw you last. Are you heavier? Have you taken on weight?
Mr. Bruce Davis, why did you decide to come back now? Why?
He would do it for...
Thanks a lot, Sim. That'll stop me short.
That's good.
Well, we received some information this morning from a very close personal acquaintance of Mr. Hughes that Hughes contacted him on Thanksgiving Eve and asked for a ride to the Sespe Hot Springs area of Ventura County, which is a remote mountainous area. He said that he declined because his wife was 9 months pregnant, but that Hughes indicated to him he was definitely going to Sespe and was going to contact one or two other people for a ride. We firmly believe that he's in the area, although we're concerned with inclement weather conditions, and we're actually concerned for his physical safety.
What effect, if any, will his turning himself in, especially in a dramatic fashion like this, have on the case that you gentlemen are concerned with upstairs?
Well, we hope it won't have any effect at all. It's an unrelated case, unrelated events, and he's unrelated to the factual and legal matters in the case presently on trial. He's not unrelated to the defendants. He was a friend and close personal acquaintance. Everyone knows that, but he's not connected with our defense. Or.
I've been covering court cases for 25 years in this town. I've covered a lot of crazy ones, but nothing like this. What else new can happen in this one, Paul?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's an emotionally draining and fatiguing case. I get up in the morning and I ask myself what's going to happen today. It's been so bizarre, and actually, although I know a number of people think to the contrary, the attorneys in this case have made every attempt to make it into an ordinary conservative lawsuit and try it solely on the basis of the facts and the circumstances the prosecution had presented in their case, but it's just been impossible. Well, I think that's an intellectual possibility. The emotional reality to me is that he's simply isolated in some remote area up there, but that he's really all right. I certainly hope so. And the Sheriff of Los Angeles has been very, very helpful. They sent a search party up there, and they went through considerable efforts to make every attempt to find him, and I certainly hope they will, and I want to thank them very much.
How much longer can the events upstairs be stymied before the judge has to take some kind of action, and is there a chance for mistrial in this? Do either of you know?
There's a chance for a mistrial, and I would say that the case isn't going to be forestalled much more than 7 calendar days. At that point, we're going to have to proceed.
If you proceed, what can it be? The judge appointing another attorney for Ms. Van Houten, or will he simply declare a mistrial, or what will happen?
Well, there are a number of alternatives. He can declare a mistrial, in which case she'd be tried all over again in front of a new jury from the very beginning. Alternative number 2, I imagine, is to substitute in an attorney of her own choosing. However, that presents some almost insurmountable problems for an attorney coming in at this late date. Thirdly, I suppose the court could appoint an attorney in the event she didn't have funds to employ her own counsel. And I suppose, fourthly, she could represent herself and continue. I think that last possibility is not much of a possibility, in as much as that motion's already been made and denied. On the other hand, there are some tremendous problems in an attorney coming in at this late date and having to review all the testimony and not being faced with the witnesses, etc.
Day, is there anything you want to add to what Paul and you have already said?
No, I don't think I have anything to add.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
you.
Oh, since you're a close friend of Ron Hughes, the mysteriously missing attorney, you must by this time be really worried.
Yes, I really am. I don't think that Mr. Hughes would have gone off out of Los Angeles and not notified someone unless he were in some kind of trouble or couldn't reach a phone.
What kind of trouble do you envision that he might be involved in?
Well, the only thing I can think of is that he's probably in nature somewhere where he can't get to a telephone and stranded.
Oh, you don't foresee any foul play or anything?
Well, I don't think there's any cause for that at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, it's possible, but I don't see any evidence of it.
When was the last time you saw Ron, and what did he tell you at that time about being in town or out of town?
I saw him a week ago Friday, the last day of the court session, and we had dinner together, and I told him at that time, he told me at that time that he was considering going to Sespe Hot Springs, and I told him at the time that I thought with the weather conditions the way they were that it might not be too good an idea because the stream crosses the road up there, and during the rainy season it gets pretty wet.
Uh-huh. Now, is there anyone else whom he might likely have left a message with or might have contacted since he's been gone?
Well, I've checked with some of his friends, and I haven't found any evidence of any messages. I found one message that was dated last Wednesday night, which evidently was on the door since that time, and that's the only one that I've come across.
A message that he left?
No, a message that someone left for him.
I see. Okay, what do you think will happen by tomorrow or the next day if he's not with us?
With regard to the trial, you mean?
Yes.
Well, I could only make an assumption there that wouldn't really be valid since I don't know, what the judge is going to do. I would assume the judge will either appoint another attorney or sever Leslie Van Houten from the case.
Mm-hmm. What's your full name?
Michael Green.
Okay, Michael, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Who, man?
Who? Who would
You have anything to
for
say
you?
to Charlie,
Are you talking
Bruce?
about Charles?
You have anything to say to Charlie?
You can't say that to Charlie.
Why? What do you mean you can't say nothing to Charlie?
Well, are you
Huh?
are you coming back here for Charlie Manson? You feel like you're helping him in some way?
Well, they want to kill bodies, don't they? Is that what they're after?
But how can you help by coming back now?
Can you give us a...
You're giving up for what? Why have you decided to come back now? What can
It's
you?
time.
Yeah, but why? Why is it time now?
Give the answer.
What are you going to do?
Well, I'm just going to put myself here for right now.
But how can you help Charles Manson or anybody else? We're all together.
We're just going to say what's true.
What is true?
Don't look to me. Tell you the truth.
Bruce? You have anything to say generally?
Generally.
Yeah.
What's being done in exchange for you giving yourself up?
Whatever's being done.
Do you know what's being done? Have any deals been made, and if so, what are they?
Well, some people were supposed to be cut loose.
Who?
Who are they?
Who?
Mary Bruner, for one?
What is the deal?
How about Nancy Pittman? Is she being kicked loose too?
Are you going to testify at all during this current case trial? Do you plan to, Bruce, in exchange for Brenda's release?
Mr. Shin?
What do you plan? Do you have anything at all right now? We just want to know what it is that you feel that you can do now for Charlie Manson or for anybody by coming back now. Is it what do you feel
What
that you can
arrangement
do?
have you made to bring him
What
in?
can you say?
What's been promised?
Well, as far as I know, nothing has been promised. The girls negotiated, and the girls had it brought in.
It's important that you showed up
Has there
at
been
this
any kind
time.
of arrangement made at all?
That I don't know.
Why was it decided in his best interest to bring him in, for him to come in, surrender voluntarily?
Well, that I don't know.
You know that you'll be facing murder charges?
Is that all?
But you do know that.
Well, Who is it
Well,
that
they're putting murder charges on everybody.
Are you guilty of murder?
Are you guilty of murder? You asked the question.
Yeah, I'd like an answer.
Well, it's in you.
Well,
Don't look to me for your answer.
Well, you're going to have to defend yourself in court sooner or later. What will your answer be there? When you're arraigned, will you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty? Oh, that's your guilt. That's the guilt of who would want me to, whoever says it.
Who is it that you feel that you are helping or releasing or cutting loose by coming back?
Coming back.
Well, coming to here, coming to this corner today. Who are you cutting loose by coming here? You use that word, cutting loose.
I understand you got married in Las Vegas a couple of 3 months ago. Is that correct?
Man,
You said you were doing this for Charlie, is that right?
for Charlie, I'm doing it for me, man.
But what are you gaining out of it? What are you?
I'm just getting to do it.
You're getting to do what?
To do what I do.
Which is what?
Which is whatever I do, man. You just have to watch.
Where do you go from here right now? You expect to be arrested?
Excuse me, gentlemen.
I think you people have had enough. Let's go.
A dancing clown upon the wall is calling all to City Hall. Your grave is mine, oh can't you see? It's your own kind to be free. The truth I've known, you are the king. My love this world to you I bring. You know you know you can be free. Look at your kind and come to me. I whisper words, you come to me. This song I sing for all to see. The past is gone and now I know, inside this cell, nowhere to go. Oh love, I love, look at your love. Oh love, I love, look at your love. My word, the truth in words you've never heard. Why do they fear and see in me? It's God themselves, I know you see. Oh love, I love, look at your love. Oh love, I love, look at your love.
Irving, first, Charlie Manson and his 3 female co-defendants are listening to final defense arguments in the murder trial from cells behind the courtroom. They're still locked out of the courtroom for misbehavior. Meantime, the 7-man, 5-woman jury is getting it firsthand from defense attorney Irving Kenerick. Do you have some idea when you will wind this up?
Well, the fact of the matter is that that what we're trying to do is trying to just get the highlights, and it's somewhat analogous to General Eisenhower. Just for an example, there's certain staff work that has to be done before you can start D-Day.
Day, I'd like your opinion of Mr. Kenerick's closing argument.
Well, I think that most of the subjects that he's covering now, I think was covered by Mr. Paul Fitzgerald when he made his closing argument. Mm-hmm. And I think that Mr. Kenerick is going into a little more detail, which I believe that is not necessary at this time.
I see. Irving Kenerick, Charles Manson's attorney, is in the 3rd day of his summation to what appears to this reporter to be a bored jury. He is up to page 12,005 of a 30,000-page transcript. So far, he's covered the French Revolution, the Watts riots, the Chicago 7. He has quoted former General Eisenhower, Harry Truman, and several other politicians. Where he will go from here is anybody's guess. He's been accused of conducting a filibuster, and he says he is still not through. This is Dick Hathcock, Channel 5 News reporting. I want to say that I'd like for you to move over a little because I'd like my blue suit to show instead of yours. Irving, what page of the transcript are you on now?
Well, the actual page, of course, in preparing a final argument, it isn't, one does not progress seriatim through the transcript. What you do is you integrate issues, and that's what makes the task somewhat difficult.
Well, the only reason I ask is somebody has likened this to a filibuster.
Well, I think that, again, the filibuster is like we spoke about the genesis of an objection. The genesis of an objection is the original improper question. Now, the genesis of whatever you want to call a filibuster or whatever is the fact that the prosecution has put on a 6-month trial here. In fact, there has been nothing by way of because of the presumption of innocence and the fact that the prosecution has to prove their case, which some people don't believe necessarily has occurred.
Do you believe that the prosecution has failed to prove a case against Mr. Manson?
Well, I'd rather not get too explicit about it. But the fact is, nevertheless, that I have a situation where the jury they are people that have to more or less go through this horrendous record. And actually the time that's involved in this and what's been going on here, actually it's just a couple of days.
Let me ask you this now. Yesterday Charlie shouted at you to sit down, that you weren't proving a point or some such thing. Did this throw you off at all? Does it distress you when Charlie injects himself into this?
Well, again, my subjective feeling is really that's not important. Harry Truman made the statement, if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. And law is a very unusual process.
And you're a very unusual attorney. Thank you, Irving.
Thank you.
Irving, the prosecution has pinned their open.
Actually,
Irving Canarick, Charles Manson's attorney, is in the third day of his summation to what appears to be a rather bored set of jurors. Let's do this over.
Well, everybody's quite concerned. A number of lawyers have come up and are very, very critical of the procedures. Even lawyers are searched, their briefcases are looked into. Every person who walks in the building is searched. When you inquire of the sheriff says to discuss it with the court, and when you discuss it with the court, they say that it has something to do with sheriff security, and you're right back where you started from. So they won't discuss with you the basis of the security problem. So it's difficult at this point to blame anybody or question anybody's motives because they simply are not in possession of any of the facts.
I see.
Well, we're a little miffed about that, that we're not told the nature and character of the threat.
Paul, what effect, if any, does the rigid security, both here in the building and the police escort of the jury, have on the possible verdicts the jury might bring in?
Well, all the defense attorneys are becoming increasingly concerned that the effect of the security is going to be to intimidate and coerce the jury. The jury must feel that they're under some danger of death. And the rumors that have been circulating are that some harm is going to come to the jury if they don't convict the defendants. And there's supposed to be some threats or something from the Manson family, but that appears to be preposterous because there isn't anybody left of the Manson family. Everybody's in jail except for about 3 girls kneeling on the sidewalk outside. We're terribly concerned that this jury they're here to decide whether Manson is a murderer, and these girls are murderers, and if they feel their life is threatened by these people, they're going to have a very difficult time acquitting them.
Well, perhaps this puts you on the spot. If it does, just to say you don't want to answer it, but do you see this as a deliberate ploy by the DA's office to maybe influence the jury, or do you think this is jury's request to hear one of the Beatles' records?
Well, it's difficult to tell. There was a considerable amount of testimony relating to the album. They do have a set of lyrics, written out lyrics, but of course there's at least one selection on the record that doesn't have any lyrics at all. It's Revolution 9. It's a selection that has in the background machine gun fire and screams and has some violent revolutionary overtones. I hate to attach any significance to it at this point. I think they're just attempting to make an independent determination and evaluation of the evidence, and they haven't heard it, and I think they simply want to hear it.
Is there any indication that anything else is sort of hanging them up?
Not yet. We just if the jury comes back into the courtroom and they ask more pointed questions about some of the items of evidence, then of course we can get some sort of indication of perhaps of how they're thinking, but so far you just can't tell.
This would be the jury's third full day of deliberation.
Correct. They started Saturday.
If those jurors had pretty well made up their minds at the conclusion of this trial, guilty or innocent, what do you think is holding them up? Is it so involved a thing, so many counts on so many persons? Could that be holding them up, or why haven't they come back with a verdict already?
Well, you must remember that they listened to about 80 witnesses. There are about 500 individual physical items of evidence. There are approximately 77 different verdicts. Remember, you have 4 defendants, you have 8 counts. I think, and the jury, of course, was instructed that they couldn't discuss it amongst themselves throughout this entire trial. This is the first time they've had to talk to one another about it. It's the first time they've had to actually review their notes and review these physical items of evidence. I think it's proceeding in a very normal fashion. I doubt that the first thing they would have done would be to go into the jury room and take a ballot. I think what the more likely, they've gone into the jury room and they're going through this evidence piece by piece and they're reviewing their notes and the testimony of the witnesses before they do anything. I would suspect they haven't even taken a ballot on innocence or guilt yet.
If I were to make a prediction all on my own that the jury is going to be a hung jury, what would you say?
Well, it's very difficult to tell. I'm in possession of so little information, of course, and no one's back there in the jury room, and you don't know. I think in a case like this, where you have a tremendous number of witnesses, a tremendous number of physical exhibits, where the trial's been lengthy, where the trial's been controversial, you always have the possibility of a hung jury. But at this point, I don't think we can say there would be a hung jury. If they deliberated a week and a half, I think that would be a distinct possibility. But at 3 days, it's very, very difficult to say.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Beautiful, Paul. He looks like a professional. Beautiful.
A tight ring of security surrounds the Hall of Justice today as the Manson jury deliberates. Both the Spring and Broadway Street entrances are being used, but sheriff's deputies are on guard to search everyone entering the building. Briefcases are opened, parcels, packages, and purses are checked. Everything carried into the Hall of Justice is closely inspected. The heavy security started Friday evening, continued over the weekend, and will last probably until the jury returns with a verdict. Meanwhile, 3 members of the Manson clan continue their vigil outside the Hall of Justice at the corner of Temple and Broadway. They've been there since the start of the trial. Sheriff's officials refuse to state why the extreme precautions are being taken. Judge Older, who's conducting the Manson case, has ordered that no comment be made. However, it has been known that threats have been received and every precaution is being taken to protect the jurors. It was only last September 7th that a bomb exploded near the office of the district attorney in the Hall of Justice, doing considerable damage, but fortunately no one was injured. From the Hall of Justice, Stan Chambers, Channel 5 News, reporting.
Yeah, I think they'll be hung. They've only seen one side of the story. So, with only seeing one side of the story, it's pretty hard to make any kind of a decision.
Have any of you ladies been in contact with Charlie or the other girls and gotten any opinions from them on the jury?
No, we haven't. Like, if they could put on a defense or speak, then everybody would be able to see, their side of the story and what they have to say. But they haven't been given a chance to say anything, and it's their lives that are on trial.
One final question. If, and I say if, Charlie were convicted of these charges, which means that he would at least be in jail for a long time, what happens to the rest of the members of the family? Where do you go? What do you do?
We all go to the desert. There's no if. Charlie will get out. All the people in jail will get out, and we'll all go to the desert together.
We will. Sure. Today is the 6th full day of deliberation by the Charles Manson murder jury, with no indication whatsoever that the 7 men and 5 women are about to reach any accord. This is take 2. Today is the 6th day of deliberation by the Charles Manson murder jury, with no indication whatsoever that the 7 men and 5 women are about to reach any accord. Security at the Hall of Justice is extremely tight. The press corps sitting in Judge Older's courtroom play cards, work crossword puzzles, do a little knitting, and a little sleeping. Today we're talking with some of the members of the Manson family who have maintained their vigil here unceasingly for several months. Hi, Brenda.
Hello.
Well, let me see some of the knitting that you're doing there, whatever you
it's
call
embroidering.
it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not hip to that.
It's just with colored threads, and this is a vest that all of us girls, all the girls in jail, and all the girls here on the corner have worked on for 4 years. And it's
worked on
Charlie's
it for
vest.
4 years?
Yeah, it's his biker vest. He wears it when he rides bikes and dune buggies and whatever he does.
Well, all of you ladies have worked on this.
Yeah, all of us.
Uh-huh.
Sadie and Leslie and Katie and Squeaky and Uish and Gypsy and us 3 and Cappy and everybody.
Well, is it about finished?
Well, we're going to line it, the whole entire thing, with the same sort of thing. This thing here, which Kitty's been working on for a year.
That's beautiful.
It's a phoenix bird.
It looks extremely intricate. Is that why it takes so long?
Yeah, it's done with maybe 1 thread at a time or 2 small threads at a time. And it's just whatever our imagination, wherever our imagination goes is where the threads go.
Does it tell a particular story?
Not really, except for an imagination. There's anything in there you wish to see.
Uh-huh. Now, I see you have a hand here. Could we hold that up to camera and see that?
Uh-huh.
And does that go on the jacket somewhere?
This is going to be part of the lining.
Oh. Now, does this have any significance, the hand part?
No, it doesn't. It's just consists of people and women and babies and...
Speaking of babies, I understand that there's a move afoot to take Gypsy's baby away from her.
Yes, it's one of their ploys to take the babies away and then threaten the girls with never seeing them again to get them to testify, on the prosecution side to some sort of story that they, lay out for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you know any of the details on the county or state trying to take Gypsy's baby?
No, they went to a hearing today at 8:30 on it, and all I know is they've been subpoenaed for a penalty phase, which means, obviously, penalty meaning take away the baby, which they've tried to do to everybody in this case.
Well, is there any move afoot to take Pooh Bear away from Mary?
Well, Mary's parents are best friends with the judge over in Wisconsin, and they've gotten legal custody of the child and termed her. They said that she didn't take care of him, yet she was in jail. She couldn't have taken care of him while she was in jail.
Sure.
So,
well, now, what do you ladies think about the jury being out so long? Does it offer any hope? This is Dick Hathcock, Channel 5 News reporting. Your client got a little rambunctious.
Well, it's whatever happened because of the attorney-client relationship. I have an obligation to him that is that I cannot discuss.
Let's say maybe I saw it.
All right.
Is that possible?
Well, whatever you saw, you saw. I mean, I can't. I don't think that it'd be incumbent upon me to discuss anything that might go to the disadvantage of anyone I represent.
He also shouted through the cell door back there for you to shut up and sit down. Does this disturb you in your carrying on this case?
Well, like I think we've discussed on other occasions, the attorney-client relationship is somewhat like the husband-wife relationship. Everything is not always
what the neighbors
sweetness. That's right. It isn't always sweetness and light.
I might say this, that I saw what happened between Mr. Manson and Mr. Caneric in court there, and I believe now that it was just a love tap. It's nothing offensive to Mr. Caneric. It was just a love tap.
It's sort of like between husband and wife, as Mr. Caneric said.
That's correct. It was just a
sort of to get his attention.
Right, a little dispute, and Mr. Caneric was talking, and he was just pulling on Mr. Caneric's arm to get his attention. It was just a love tap, believe me, gentlemen.
Was in there this morning. Did he actually rap you on the shoulder?
And because someone is a client doesn't mean that they are like a rock or just a eunuch.
Does it disturb you when your client does this?
Well, that's part of the practice of law. I mean, one of the as we've discussed before, this is one of the things. People who are lawyers do not always agree with people who are clients. And
Mr. Caneric, what did Fitzgerald ask for a plea of insanity for his client at this late date?
Well, I rather than get specific, let me put it this way. There is a plea that's recognized and not guilty by reason of insanity, and Mr. Fitzgerald, as an attorney, saw fit to attempt to have that plea entered at this point in the proceedings. I would gather that we can argue certainly that forgetting this particular case, that the mental state of Ms. Krenwinkel or any litigant is probably something to consider in the penalty.
You're also asking for...
Why did she reject it?
You'll have to ask her and Mr. Fitzgerald.
You're also asking for an investigation of one of the jurors on the grounds that she may be a little bit nutty and perhaps a heavy drinker. Is this true?
Well, there have been papers filed in the court, and there may be a hearing on this matter. I would like to state that I think that all of us, when we are defendants and when we're members of the public or whatever, all of us have a right to have jurors who are of an impartial mind and who have capacity and all of that to judge a case. And I think that it wouldn't be proper for me to discuss the details of what you're referring to at this time. However, I can state that there was, I mean, this is a matter of public record, over Channel 9 on January 21, 1971, there was an interview with Mr. Hines, who was and is the husband of Mrs. Hines, who is on this jury. That's a matter of public record.
Now, is Mr. Manson going to take the stand and testify?
Well, I can't discuss, because not only because of the publicity order, but because of the attorney-client privilege.
Day, will your client take the stand? Do you know? Have you discussed it with her?
Yes, I believe she'll take the stand. And
yeah, I would think that the people out there in the public would be more interested in the substance of what happened in the courtroom today. There was a witness on the stand, Mr. Crow. Now, it would seem to me
the fellow known as Lots of Papa.
Well, right. Now, it would seem to me that we would be performing a service for all of us if we had, and if we would make available the detailed testimony of Mr. Crow. Now, there is.
Well, he has just testified that Mr. Manson shot him.
Well, but they're assuming, arguendo, that what you're saying is correct. There are other aspects of his testimony which I think are very important as far as inferences in this case are concerned, and I think that that it would behoove us all to read the actual testimony of Mr. Crow before we make any judgment concerning Mr. Manson. After all, the case that's on trial is the Tate LaBianca case.
Mr. Shin, Mr. Fitzgerald moved an insanity plea for his client this morning. Why didn't you choose to join in that?
Well, I felt that at this late time, there was no necessity for it. Now, at the end of this plea, I think we should have entered it before the trial started, and not at this late date.
Why didn't you?
Well, at that time, I don't think it was necessary.
Why?
There was no indications that we needed that plea.
Would this be an admission tantamount to confession day?
No, I mean, at that time, I felt that after talking with Miss Atkins and her background, that there was no need to enter a plea by reason of insanity.
But do you wish that you had?
No,
If I may, I'd like to make a statement. When Mr. Shin says we, he is not speaking for me by any manner or means. When he says we, I would assume he's speaking about himself and his client. I don't want anyone to think he's speaking for me at any time.
Irving, are you going to enter
between Mr. Canarik and Mr. Manson?
Well, like Mr. Manson said, there was no communication. But I believe there is communication. And they're just fighting like, cats and dogs.
But Irving, are you going to enter a insanity plea for Manson by chance?
Oh, I wish I could answer that directly. This is what Mr. Fitzgerald did. He did on his own, on behalf of his client, and there's no pertinency whatsoever to anything that I'm going to do.
Have you ever thought of entering an insanity plea for Manson?
Well, you see,
you're a good lawyer now.
No, that's when have you stopped beating your wife type of question. That's exactly what that is. There is Mr. Manson, what his state of mind is and so forth is strictly, as far as the public's concerned, as far as all of us is concerned, is a matter of sheer propaganda and publicity by the district attorney's office and by the mass media. We wouldn't be here with all of these TV cameras and all of that right now, except that it was a structured type of situation to put Mr. Manson in a bad light.
Well, you said that last week, but again, Irving.
Well, it's true. The sun rose today.
Thanks, Irving.
The sun rose today, and it rose last week. That doesn't mean that it isn't right.
Irving, you talk to me better outside the jail than you do in here. Irving, did you consider entering an insanity plea for Manson again? Let's stick to the point.
That is assuming, that is a when have you stopped beating your wife type of question. That assumes there's something wrong with Mr. Manson's sanity. I mean, obviously, this is ridiculous. It's like,
Irving,
you just can't ask that question.
That's why you're a good lawyer. Son of a gun. Did you say yes or no?
I'm saying that your question is not a proper question because it assumes matters that are not even an issue.
Irving, how can you say that?
Why did he shoot you? How long have you known Charlie Manson? How long did you linger between life and death?
You asked what he thought of Charlie?
I don't think we asked. I've been told that Charlie Manson shot you. Is that true?
Could be.
Well, let's not kid each other around now. It's either true or it isn't true. Did he shoot you? And if so, when and where?
Yes, he shot me, yes.
When did this take place?
August the 1st, 1969, on Franklin Boulevard, next to the Magic Castle apartments.
Mm-hmm. In an apartment house?
Yes, an apartment.
Well, now, why?
I refuse to answer on the grounds I may.
Well, is there some reason why you'd rather not answer that?
I'd rather not answer that question.
Well, let me ask it this way. Was it a personal dispute of some kind, or what?
Yes, sort of, yeah. Personal dispute.
Well, was anyone else involved?
Yes.
Well, who was that?
Charlie Watson.
You mean Tex Watson?
Yes, Tex Watson.
Well, were you having a dispute with Tex and Charlie interfered, or how did it happen? I don't mean to push you on this, but since you have admitted that he shot you, I'd like to know why. Well, you were having a disagreement with Tex or with Charlie, and out of this grew the shooting. Or awareness is through fear?
Yeah, one or the other. Fear through awareness, or awareness through fear, something to that effect.
Now, Charlie Manson said this?
Yes, he said that, and he walked out.
And he walked out without his shirt?
Yeah, he walked out, and he took the shirt of my friends.
I see.
With him.
What kind of a gun did he shoot you with?
From looking at it, it was just... just a revolver.
A revolver?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Well, without going into any further detail except for caliber, what caliber was it?
I will not comment on that.
Oh, all right. Now, how seriously were you shot?
Pretty seriously, critical. My heart had stopped twice on the operating table, and well, they had sent telegrams to my family telling them that they don't think I would make it. In fact, I still have the bullet in my back.
You still have the bullet in your back?
Yes. They said it's in a muscle and it formed a scab over it. And they didn't want to take it out. I believe it was kind of close to my spine, the reason why they didn't want to take it out. And also, I like to have that bullet removed from my back.
You would like to have it removed? Why would you like it removed at this point?
Well, actually, it could do me bodily harm. As medical terms, that I've been advised that it could
cause some future problems?
Yes, in the future, as far as getting in my bloodstream, a poison from the lid.
I see.
After a certain of time. I've been informed by medical...
Well, if you had this bullet removed, would you turn it over to the police authorities to compare with the weapon that Charlie Manson has been accused of using?
I will not comment at this time.
Can you tell me how long you knew Manson and Tex Watson?
No comment.
Okay, now without perhaps...
So I'd say that same night I met him. Same night.
Oh, I see.
The very same night.
Now, were you introduced to them by a third party, or?
Yes, I were.
Okay. Now, without going into it, I suppose there was some kind of a business deal going on, and as happens, there are disputes in business and that sort of thing.
I will not comment on this time.
Okay. What is your feeling about Charlie Manson at this time?
Well, my feelings for him is, I believe that I feel that he's I think that
how long did you linger between life and death?
I couldn't actually pinpoint it, but I know several times that I attempt to get up and to move around, and then I had collapses. I cannot really pinpoint. I know I was in the hospital for 18 days, and I say majority of those was pretty critical.
Yeah.
But I just felt it would take as much courage to die than to live.
Now, I know you by the name of Lots of Papa. Where did that name come from? How'd you get a moniker like that?
It seems like everyone that I meet seems that I seem to be a daddy to them, more or less, because I'm always trying to give some sort of advice, I guess, you know. But I don't practice what I preach.
What do you weigh? You look like you weigh about 230, 240. Is that maybe where it came from? You're Lots of Papa.
Yes, about 293, more or less.
That much?
Yes. It was just that there were friends of mine that named me that, Lots of Papa. Yeah.
Well, I think they'd have to be a friend to get away with it.
Yes. Well, I think it was said out of divine order. I mean, it's beautiful. I consider it a pet name.
Yeah. Well, now, is there anything that you want to tell me that I haven't thought to ask you about?
I don't believe so.
Well, now, I understand that you do a little writing, and you could, if somebody was interested, collaborate with them on a magazine story, or perhaps a book, or even sort of a technical advisor for movie stuff.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm ready for all of that. I am capable of doing acting or whatever. And as far as the story is concerned, I wouldn't mind getting it to any magazine would like to have it.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I know I had to drag some of this out of you, and I hope you're not sore at me about it, but that's my business.
I know, I felt those that thought plus belief equals manifestation. It was my thought. And whatever happens to me, it was because of me. No one else but me. So you're just doing your job.
Thanks very much.
I can cooperate with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You've heard the verdict. How do you feel now? What are you going to do now?
You've all judged yourselves poorly.
Are you guys proud of a system where a man cannot defend himself? Are you proud of it?
That was an 8-month trial with many witnesses. What are you going to do now?
That was a trial, 8 months of prosecution testimony. They've convicted these people, and you are next, all of you.
What are you
doing now? Listen to me. There are many more men who are experiencing the same injustice. There's a revolution coming very soon.
What would you do next now? What are you going to do right now?
We're going to stay here until Charlie's out.
Looks like that will be never.
He'll be out. All the people will be out.
What makes you so sure?
Angela Davis will be out. Bobby Seale will be out. There's a revolution coming. You've all judged yourselves.
What gives you this faith?
Sit here until they get out?
Yes.
be sitting here?
Soon.
When is soon?
Very
Why
soon.
will you be here?
Weeks?
What do you think you're going to do here?
You'll know. You'll know. You'll see it.
You'll probably be out there trying to televise it until he comes out.
Did you expect this verdict?
The verdict doesn't make any difference. It's what has led up to the verdict. He has not had a fair trial. There are many more men who are not having fair trials. They've hid us word from you. Charlie hasn't been able to speak in the courtroom. The defendants haven't been able to put on a defense. They've thrown the Constitution in the wastebasket. Where does that leave your law? It's anarchy. Total anarchy is
Do you
coming.
plan to continue to sit here indefinitely?
Yep. We'll be
How
here.
long?
However long we're here.
What do you plan to accomplish by sitting here?
We're waiting for those penitentiaries and those jail doors to open.
What's going to open them?
The revolution.
What do you mean by a revolution?
A bloody revolution.
You going to be part of it?
Oh, I will have a part, maybe. I'll do whatever I do. I want to take the children to the desert.
Did the verdict come yet? What is it?
A little more.
I'm stuck. My feet are...
Were you surprised by the verdict, Mr. Fitzgerald?
Well, we were disappointed by the verdict. We anticipated the verdict. We all anticipated the verdict, but we were disappointed nonetheless when it came. We felt that we lost the case when we lost our change of venue motion. We felt we had about as much chance of winning this case in Los Angeles in 1970 as Sam Shepard had in Cleveland in 1950.
Could you have won the case outside of Los Angeles?
Yes, I think we could have won the case outside of Los Angeles. I think we could have won it as each and every defendant.
Why do you say that, Paul? Why do you think you had no chance here?
I think that we were forced to select a jury from a very hostile and antagonistic community of Los Angeles. We wouldn't have had those problems if we would have been able to select a jury someplace else.
Do you have any regrets of not having presented a defense?
No. I thought about that very carefully, and we don't. At least I don't have any regrets about. We tried it the best possible way. We tried to win, actually. Hope springs eternal in the human breast, I guess. We tried very, very hard to win.
The district attorney's office and I personally and the Los Angeles Police Department are very, very pleased with the verdict. That goes without saying. We're all very, very happy.
Is this what you expected?
Yes, definitely.
There were no surprises, apparently.
Absolutely not. We put on a monumental amount of evidence against each defendant, and it was our belief that the jury could only come to one verdict, guilty.
What about the penalty phase?
Were you worried about the verdict at any point?
No. I want to say that this jury came back exceedingly swiftly. For a 7-month trial, they were only out 6 days. This is very, very quick.
What about the penalty phase now?
We've subpoenaed over 50 witnesses. This does not mean that we're going to call all 50 witnesses to the stand. I'm going to have to make that determination within the next day or so. There's a very strong likelihood that we will put on a very short penalty hearing.
This is the arena, and this is the day after. For 8 months, this courtroom has been crowded. Hundreds of persons have stood outside in line waiting to get a seat. 84 witnesses have paraded to that witness stand and given their testimony. 30,000 pages of testimony have been recorded in this case, hundreds of exhibits shown. Yesterday, the 7-man, 5-woman jury reached a decision on the ultimate fate of Charles Manson and his 3 female co-defendants. Guilty of murder, guilty of conspiracy, all of which carry a possible death sentence. But today, this courtroom is like an old fighter in the 9th round of a main event. Weary, empty, one more round to go. And there's one more round to go in this case, the penalty phase. This is Dick Hathcock, Channel 5 News reporting. This is the arena, and this is the day after. For 8 months, persons have crowded this courtroom. Hundreds of persons have stood in line for hours trying to get a seat in here. But yesterday, this is the arena, and this is the day after. For 8 months, this courtroom has been crowded every day. Hundreds of persons have stood in line outside waiting to get a seat in here. 84 witnesses have paraded to that witness stand, given their testimony. 30,000 pages of testimony have been recorded, hundreds of exhibits. There have been fights in here, there's been lots of drama, excitement, lots of name-calling, bickering, high drama. Yesterday, the jury of 7 men and 5 women reached a decision on the ultimate fate of Charles Manson and his 3 female co-defendants. Guilty of murder, guilty of conspiracy with possible death sentence. Today, this courtroom, this arena, is like a tired old fighter going into the 10th round. He may come up for the 10th, he may not, but this arena will see some more action, probably in a few days' time. This is Dick Hathcock, Channel 5 News reporting.